Hello, I'm Tara Ledesma, your host of the Gapers Delay podcast, and welcome to episode 4, where we'll be talking about home rental, home buying, HOA, and all things just home. I moved out probably at the age of 17. I was just about to turn 18. I moved into my then boyfriend, now husband's home, well, his parents' home, and lived with him and his family for a bit. It was a cramped environment. He had multiple siblings, so it was kind of a cramped environment. We did apply for apartment rentals. However, it's hard to get an apartment when you're our age at 18, 17, 18, and you don't have a credit score. And how do you get a credit score if you need a credit score to get a credit score? So we had that conundrum to overcome. While my husband was at work, I received a phone call saying that we were accepted for this one apartment. And it was exciting. Like, finally, somebody's giving us a chance. Should have been our first clue. But I was so excited. I thought I would surprise my husband. So I had a friend come over and we packed up all of our belongings. My belongings, my husband, then boyfriend, now husband's belongings, put them in my little car. And we putted to this new place, and, we didn't have much. We were living, in shared bedrooms, so it wasn't like we had a lot of personal possessions. So we were just starting out. Like, if you could see a picture of this apartment, the TV was probably the size of some of your phones nowadays. I wouldn't, it's insane to think about now how little and bulky that thing was. But hey, it did the job, right? So I called him at work after we got everything moved in, and I said, take down this address. And he said, why? And I said, because your home isn't at home anymore. We got a new address. So I'm giving you an address to your new home. And he was confused. He's like, we moved out? And I'm like, yeah, we're all moved out. So it was a weekend where his parents were away for the weekend. So it was kind of easy to do unnoticed too with his family. Was it the right thing to do? I don't know. I was a kid, but that's what we did. I jumped on an opportunity, thought I'd surprise him with it, and it worked out. We got, I think it was like maybe $450, $550 for, was it a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, ground level apartment? And, it was decent while it lasted. The laundry room was scary though. You had to go to the basement to access the laundry room, and the basement connected all the units, all the different buildings that were on this site location were all connected by the underground basement, basically. And there were doors. Some were locked, some were unlocked. Some lights flickered, some lights didn't even work. And it was accessible to anybody could just walk in and go into the basement. There was no security by any means. You didn't even have to enter a code to get into the building. You just walk into any building. So, I can walk in my basement and come out in another building potentially if I wanted to walk that far, or just, use it as a lap, but nobody was walking down there. And if they were, you didn't want to be down there while they were. It was just a scary environment, and the paint job didn't help either, because it was, it looked like paint that didn't have a name, almost like salmon, but not salmon. And then some parts were like, I don't even think it was yellow. You can't even call it yellow, but it was just these off colors. It was just paint that doesn't have a name to it. But we ended up breaking the lease. I was pregnant while we were living here. Somebody tried breaking in the ground unit sliding glass door while I was home. So it was time to go. So on the hunt for another apartment, we went. I found an apartment outside the neighborhood it had other apartments around it, but they didn't connect underneath this time. And we were on the 3rd floor. This is when I learned what the band 311 is, because we were apartment 311 and everybody was excited and I didn't know why. And that's how I learned who 311 was. Side note, irrelevant side note, but here we are. So that place, it was decent. I think that was a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and we had a balcony, and it was nice. We hosted a lot of events there. It was a good time. We made some good friends. We had the neighbor downstairs who invited us to like candlelight parties and stuff. And we were within walking distance to, that's the benefit of being, in a high volume suburb or close to the city, is your accessibility is just everywhere. So at that time we would just walk to a Super K, at any given time, day or night back then. We did have curfew issues when I had my sister with me, and she's like, well, if I act like I don't understand, the officer isn't going to give me a curfew ticket. So if she ever got stopped, she would, just play stupid big time. And that's how she would get around that. It was a different time back then. But we had a lot of fun, just, being local, being crazy. I'm pretty sure I laughed so hard I peed in one of the parking lots there. Pretty sure my sister was involved in that one too. She loved to make people laugh. We enjoyed that place. We were young, and I think it was the right environment for us. We were off the, ground level. So we were definitely, and you had to be buzzed in on this one. So the security felt, there, until I started getting phone calls. And these phone calls would come in when I was in the apartment alone, every time. Back then, when you had a landline, you didn't know who was calling unless you had caller ID. And I don't know if caller ID was out yet, because I remember having to report it to the police, and they put a wiretap on the phone and found out who it was. And it turns out, remember that candlelight party I mentioned earlier that I went to, the neighbor chick of mine, downstairs? Her husband had actually taken my number off of my order and started calling me when he seen, my then boyfriend, now husband, leave the apartment, or, can confirm that I was, because he had a ground level unit that faced the front door of people walking in and out. So he knew he can monitor basically who was leaving, coming and going in the building. So apparently he was monitoring that with me on the 3rd floor. So when he knew I was home alone, he would call me. And at first I thought it was a friend playing a practical joke, like calling and talking dirty, like being funny, like, who is this? And then it just eventually, it got disgusting. It got disgusting to a point, like I said, where I called the police, and then we found out that it was the neighbor downstairs. We go to the police department, and I see the neighbor's wife standing in the lobby. And she says to me, "What are you doing here?" And I'm looking at her dumbfounded, like, what the hell does she mean? What am I doing here? Doesn't she know she's here? And so out of curiosity, I asked her the same thing without answering, because I want to know why she thinks she's there. So I asked her instead. I asked her, I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" And she said, "Well, my husband got arrested for stealing newspapers." So she's in the lobby this whole time thinking that her husband is being held for stealing newspapers. So I had to be the one in the lobby to be like, "No, lady, your husband stole my phone number and kept calling me and was talking very dirty and very creepy." And technically, that could have escalated, nobody knows. I don't know what's in this guy's head, or, what his future plans were, but that was some scary shit. So fast forward, the judge ended up putting a restraining order on him. I didn't even have to do any work. Like, the police did all the work in this. Kind of surprised, but they did. It was great. They gave the case. They said, show up. I didn't even have an attorney. The judge was like, yeah, you got to move. They made him move. The whole 9 yards. And it was crazy because when we first found out, when they told us who the guy was, I didn't immediately know it was my downstairs neighbor right away. I was like, why does that name sound familiar? And my husband was like, yeah, it does sound familiar. So as we were leaving the building one day, we seen the last name on the mailbox. And then my heart sank. I'm like, oh, he's in the building. So it was like, okay, apartment number 2, not gonna work. But we stayed for the lease, obviously, because he had to leave. So we stayed. Once the lease was done, we ended up renting a house back a little closer to the city again. It was a nice house. It was a decent yard. We had our wedding reception in this yard. We got married there, at the courthouse, not too far from there, and had the reception in the backyard. It was really nice. The house itself, as far as functionality, wasn't the greatest. Everybody was convinced that it was haunted. I didn't feel anything, but everybody else did, so that's to be determined. However, we did get a letter from the fire department telling us we had, I believe it was 48 hours to leave the premise. Like 48 hours. And they were fining the landlord and basically shutting down her ability to rent the property because she didn't have it up to code, apparently. So we just find out I have a baby in the house and now we got 48 hours to move. So, okay, so we find another place and we're back out in the neighborhood we were prior to this. And we rent out a 2-flat and we're on the bottom unit this time. We came in, explained the situation. We got a letter from the old landlord vouching that we were good renters, so we supplied that to the new landlord and she ended up renting to us. I think the rent there was $650 for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-flat, but it was a shared laundry unit with the upstairs unit, which was fine. That's fine. So, kicker of this one is the last landlord who we had to leave because the fire department told us we had to. We get a call from Andy's parents saying that they have court papers there for Andy and I. And I'm like, what do you mean court papers? And she says, as she's reading, that they're basically, the old landlord is suing us for breaking the lease. Like, are you serious right now? So our new landlord happened to be an attorney. So I'm thinking jackpot here. Like, why don't we ask our new landlord? Like, we're her tenants. She would have vested interest, right, in our finances and whatever. So we had told her what had happened. And she said, because they were served to his parents and not us, that they have to reserve the papers and not to show up in court. Now, I didn't know, and there's probably some attorneys out there listening to this, shaking their head or putting their head on the table right now. I get it now. Okay, I get it now. But, we should have showed up to court. She lied to us by telling us not to go and to wait for it to get delivered to the correct address. What we found out was she was friends with our old landlord's husband, who is also an attorney. So those two attorneys knew each other. And she knew that immediately when I gave her the letter stating from the last landlord that we were good tenants. And yeah, that was that. She ended up selling the building and gave us less than 30 days to move out. So it was like, okay, on the hunt, we got to find another place. So we ended up going further south to what I like to call the country. Accessibility is like sparse, but it's way south, like a little too south for me. But it was a ground unit apartment. Yes, I know. A ground unit apartment again. But we were so far south that, I mean, it's like the banjos were playing. I don't know. It was a little too quiet for me. I can't adjust to that kind of quiet. That was difficult for me. The only saving grace is that there was train tracks right in front of my house, or rental apartments, sorry. And so we would hear, the train. So at least gave me some sort of noise. I need noise. So that first apartment was all right. It was decent size. It did what it needed to do. It ended up having a leak from rain one time, and it started to mold. And the landlord didn't really want to do anything about it, so we had to put a stronghold on him. We wrote a letter, threatened to get an attorney if need be because of the health hazards. So he ended up getting the apartment cleaned the way it needed to after that one flooding. We actually left that apartment in better shape than we rented it in. And it was interesting because he was known for not getting back deposits, but we got our deposit back, that's for sure. I don't know if anyone else ever did. From everyone I talked to in the building, that's rare. But keep your receipts. That's all I can say. And then the second place after that we rented was right down the street. Like, we literally walked our stuff to the next unit. And that was a 2-flat again. And we were on the top apartment this time. And that was all right. It was decent, did the job. We were just building up and waiting and saving to buy our first home. And then finally we got the opportunity. And it was a townhome. And it was sort of west of Chicago. Or, I'm not familiar with that area, but let's go. Why not? So we packed up our stuff. We got a house or a townhouse, and we started moving west. And probably not even a month of living there, we got hit head on. It was the other driver's fault. It put my husband out of work for a while, and we had just bought this house. we need him to work. I'm trying to work. It's not covering everything. It's not bringing in enough. We got big bills now. We have adult bills. This is our first townhome, and we can't even furnish it because this kid that hit us head on put us out of commission in a sense, and we didn't have any income to supplement it. So it was very hard in the beginning. And then once we got our bearings and finally got on our feet and things were going well, the 2007-8 market crash hit. Now, we were one of the ones that didn't do the ARM. We did the fixed, thinking all our equity would be safe. Everybody around us did the ARM, and that worked for them, but we lost all of our equity. Everything gone. Everything we thought we had gone in that housing market. So we had to start our own company, basically run a corporation flooring. It was S Corp, flooring company. So you've got audits and paperwork and tax attorneys and accountants and, so and I got this new child in school in a new school district, and I'm being pulled all over. I got my sister who, is fighting cancer. So there was a lot of chaos in that house as far as obstacle wise. The house itself, we were the first owners in it, so it was nice. There were no problems. My only problem was the HOA made us pick between two different gross mulches to put in the front. It either had to be the mulch that molded or the mulch that brought in the bugs. That's the way I referred to it. And they only gave you two options. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I don't like HOAs, because I like to make my own choices in what I like and want. Like, why should I have to pick between moldy mulch and bug mulch? What if I don't want any of that mulch? Like, that's gross. But, HOA is nothing you can do. We ended up losing my sister while I was living in this place. I remember that night vividly, actually, because I got a phone call and I dropped to the floor. My daughter even says she remembers that moment. So it was, and then hours later, I think it was an invoice for one of the companies. It had to be done. No matter what state of grief I was in, I still had a business to run. I had to produce. So that was tough. We had a lot of toughs in that townhome. That was for sure. And then, like I said, the '07 market hit and we lost all our equity. We couldn't sell. We couldn't find anybody to rent. And then my mom got sick with cancer. This is about 2 years after we lost or a year and a half after we lost my sister. My mom asked us to let go of the house, give up trying to make it work or find somebody, and to move in, to my childhood home and be her caretaker until, whatever the inevitable happens. So obviously, again, we packed up our stuff. My daughter had to change districts. We went back to my old hometown and put our roots there and helped my mom since my sister was gone already. I took my old room when I was little on the other side of this house. And so we were kind of separated. We did have our own space, so it wasn't too cramped. It was, it worked for what it needed to do. Being that we walked away from the townhome we had purchased after the market fell, we could not purchase a home unbeknownst to me. I guess there's a law stating how you have to wait X amount of years until after the home's sold before you can purchase again. So when that time came, between that time and, the house, my childhood home being sold because my mom had now passed, we weren't given much time to home shop at all. We had pretty much limited house shopping time, and then we had to jump on whatever we got because the place we were in was no longer going to be available to us. So we found a house. Oh, this house became our depth of hell. Before we jump into the depths of hell in this new house, let's take a quick break so you can go on over to Amazon and in the search bar type Reading My Late Sister's Cancer Journal. It's a book by Tara Ledesma, myself, where I take my sister's journal entries during her cancer journey and put it into a book along with my mom's email updates about her journey. Half the proceeds of every book sold will go to Northwestern Live Well Cancer Center Resource Center that provides free services to cancer patients and their family. Let's go ahead and read a quick journal entry now, shall we? While my surgery started at 7 and ended at 2, 7 hours. I went through radiation treatment too. I received as much radiation as a person can handle, end quote. Again, go to Amazon, search Reading My Late Sister's Cancer Journal, and enjoy. Thank you. Now back to the program. Now this is our very first home purchase, an entire house with a whole yard that's ours. That's a big deal for us. FHA, let's do this. So we did, and the view is undeniably beautiful. You can't deny that. There's windows and everything. However, we were bamboozled, in my opinion, with this home. Bamboozled. And if I had to take a guess, I am pretty sure that some people were probably paid off and knew things about this house but let it get sold FHA anyway. Because I did report the inspector. Again, I got the inspector from the realtor. We didn't know. I feel a lot of you probably shaking your head right now. Yeah, we didn't know. We learned. We know now. But, the inspector did the inspection, inspected the roof before we even got there, and came down right after we pulled in. He was on the roof and he's like, "Oh, I just finished up here." And we were like, "Oh, we thought you were going to wait, cause we wanted to talk to you first." And, anyway, fast forward to him finishing the inspection. He sends the report to the realtor, and then the realtor sends it to us, which I find out in our state is illegal. And on the inspection report, it did not have his ID number, which was supposed to be on there, and some other information that the Department of, Regulations said that he didn't do. So the Department of Regulations told me he is completely in the wrong, but still couldn't get the Attorney General to look at it, still couldn't get an attorney to take it. Still, the state turned around and renewed the inspector's license, because why not? So we ended up, when we did the walkthrough for the house, we had all our stuff in a van. We had nowhere to go. We had the dogs. We were literally, this is it. So upon the walkthrough, before signing the papers, we walk in, and all the homeowners' stuff is here. Everything. From clothes in the dryer and washer, stuff in the dishwasher, garages filled with stuff, cars too. One car, I seen a title, belonged to some guy out of state, and I'm not sure how he signed this title on the date he did when I looked his record up, and he had passed 2 years prior to signing this vehicle registration. And then in the garage, there was, sulfuric battery acid that was not stored properly. And my husband didn't know what it was. So when he picked it up, he ended up getting burned. It ate a hole in the concrete. I know some of you chemists out there are shaking your head now. We know now. And it ate a hole in the concrete from there, and it went on a downslope almost to the door. It was several feet that this ate through. We had to call in the sheriffs to make sure none of the vehicles that were there were reported stolen. We had to get a dumpster there, and it took over a week just to even get our stuff in. So our stuff was stuck in one of them little pod things, storage things, until we can get all of the old owner's stuff out. He even left bank statements and stuff here, and that's the only thing I think that nobody wanted to take the case on, is because the guy comes from a significant amount of money. So he would bury us in the cost of continuing the court case, court case continuances, that would bankrupt us, where it wouldn't bat an eye for him. So I think attorneys knew that there was no money for them to be made in this property. So it was kind of like a double whammy, I suppose. But, here we are 7 years later, and we're still trying to get everything up to par and where it needs to be. It's come a long way, but it's still got a long way to go. But, our second property we have is for a campground. And you have to buy a spot to have a campground spot. So you have to own a plot of land to have your camper on the site at the campground itself. So you're ultimately paying property, you're purchasing the property, paying property tax, and then you're paying separate spot fee for the campground site that you have every year that you opt in to have. So the HOA there, my great grandparents set roots in this area in the 70s. I recently came across pictures of the campground, more pictures from back then. And some new guy just came in, the president of this new HOA, or the HOA, he's new by 2 years. He came from up north. He's a retired businessman. And it feels like he wants to turn this area into maybe a luxury area with the lake, properties in Michigan, and the lakes and the houses all around it. This isn't like that. It's very open. Houses are spread apart. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. There isn't accessibility. It's going to take you a while to get to the nearest store. It's just not accessible. It's literally in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. And he wants to turn this into something that it's not. So we are now faced with the challenge of going against the raise that they want to place just on the campers and not so much the homeowners, which some homeowners are campers and some people are just homeowners there. I know it's a little confusing. Here's the thing. Like I said earlier, my great grandparents have set roots there. My mom's mom had a place there. I know that area. I've been there since I was a baby. And I know things change, but there's no reason for it to change this much in the area it's in. And that's my concern is, in my opinion, I think he's a bored project manager who's retired and is looking for something to do and feel important doing it. Like he accomplished something. And we're the project. And then once that's done, he moved on and we're left with, the mess to clean up. I mean, I guess that's politics all over, isn't it? But that's the current issue we're dealing with HOAs. And I always said I'd never get involved with an HOA again. But the only reason I did is because this place was happy for me. It was the only place that I remember happiness. Now I know that's different for, my mom. She has since passed away. That did not turn into her happy place. And same with other family members, that did not turn into their happy place. But I was young enough to where that was able to stay my happy place. So I guess for me, having it change so drastically feels like I'm losing another piece of the good part of the family that I had that I already lost, if that makes sense. So I'm definitely emotionally projecting with this, and I got to take a step back and keep my emotions in check and stick with the facts. So I did pull the ledgers for this HOA for the past 3 years. So we'll be going through those before the next meeting. It should be interesting to see what happens there. But, in the world of home renting, home ownership, or home anything, there's always something that needs to be done, something that needs to be tended to, something that needs to be addressed or fixed, or something that's just gonna suck your money out. So I'd like to thank all of you for listening to my podcast, and I hope you join me next time where we talk about all things healthcare and health. Until then, have a good week and enjoy.